Paris, from Mount Kilimanjaro to the Taj Mahal. And on this journey, he has seen poverty through the eyes of a teacher, a principal, a traveler, and a person who decided that it was time to make a difference. Schools built by Walls of Wisdom and its supporters now stand in the world's poorest countries and provide education to over 600 students. Geoff is going to challenge you to share your passion with the world and to make a difference. Please welcome Geoff Morgan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I always love coming to Singapore American School. It's a beautiful campus, amazing facilities, wonderful teachers, well, most of them. Yeah. My condolences for the people that have Mr. Cuthbert as a teacher. I've seen his classes. Yeah, he makes you guys work hard. All that running, push-ups, it's exhausting. And what a good-looking group of students. Get better looking every year, yeah. It's always a really good audience in Singapore American School. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the humidity. It keeps you looking young. I hope you realize how lucky you are attending a school like this. Do you ever think about that? Do you? You think about all the gifts that you've been given in life? Do you ever wonder why we live in a world in which there are five-star hotels, fancy restaurants, an endless number of luxuries, yet some people can only dream of having enough food to eat, a warm bed to sleep in, and an opportunity to go to school? Raise your hand if you think about these things. If this stuff has ever come across your mind, if you've ever wondered why we live on a planet in which some people have so much and others so little. Good for you. Because I believe that this is the first step and that all of you are ready and able to do beautiful things in this world. And this afternoon, I would like to share what I have learned about poverty over the last 10 years, talk to you about a nonprofit organization that I founded building schools, and invite you and challenge you to think about how we can create a more compassionate, empathetic, and peaceful world. Now, I didn't always realize my responsibility to others. For me, that didn't happen until much later in life. And when it happened in a single moment. Have you ever looked at the face of a child born in poverty? Not glanced at pictures on the internet or TV, or maybe quickly walked past somebody on the street, but really looked into their eyes, beyond the surface, into the depths of who they really are. It was in Sierra's eyes that I saw a type of courage and fearlessness that would change my life forever. It was in Sierra's eyes that I realized that she is no different than you or I. And I knew from that moment forward I would do everything I could to save this girl, this 12-year-old girl, from her life of impoverishment. And before I tell you about how I met Sierra, I would like to share one of my favorite photographs. This image was taken by astronauts aboard Apollo 17. It was the last manned mission to the moon. And since then, no human being has been far enough away to capture a full Earth image. This image is still one of the most popular images in all of existence. It is timeless, it is universal, and it represents the only place to our knowledge in the entire universe that can support our fragile human lives. This is where 50,000 years of human history has taken place. The rise and fall of civilizations, the discovery and extinction of species. This is where everything has been invented, all of the music composed, all of the art created, and this is where every last love story has taken place. I sometimes look at this astonishing photograph and I think to myself, what a wonderful perspective the distance of 45,000 kilometers offers us, because that's how far away that is. From this distance, you can't see the borders of our countries, the color of our skin, or the amount of money in our bank accounts. From this distance, you begin to realize that we are all in this together, and that our collective human story is one. From this distance, you can begin to chip away at that persistent and flawed thought that we are somehow separate from one another. And you begin to realize that we are all in this together. You are going to inherit a world with an endless number of challenges, unprecedented challenges. And a great deal of those challenges exist in sub-Saharan Africa. So this morning or this afternoon, I would like to begin in sub-Saharan Africa, specifically in Ghana, in a community called Yapala. In the Yapala community, it is made up of mainly farmers who survive on less than $1 a day. And the total literacy rate, the amount of people who can read or write, is only 3%. But unfortunately, in this community, there's very little money for school. And so in this video I'm about to show you, I want you to imagine, I invite you to imagine what it would be like going to school in Yapala for a day.
So the first day I got to this school, after speaking with the head teacher and then interacting with the children, I realized that these are serious people that need help. So if there is a need, if we can, why don't we come to these people's aid since they are so serious about education?
Can rain about 2-3 days consecutive. That means we are not going to have classes, and it affects my teaching and then the learning of the children too.
Right now, this school is from KG1 to P6. It is my hope to see them going to JSS, and in the future I want to see them also attending SS and other institutions.
We have some settlements here, some are, especially these Fulanis. I have a lot of them in my school here. So if the new structure is being put up to us, we see that they themselves, they also try to bring more of their children to us so that we'll get more enrollments, especially the girl child. I'll be talking to them about the girl child.
So growing up in a small town in Canada, my life and my childhood was much different than these children growing up in Ghana. My childhood was peaceful and happy and quiet. And it was full of long bike rides, endless games of street hockey, and fishing trips. on the weekend. When I was this age, I was vaguely aware of the world beyond my small town. And the only exposure I got to poverty was often through TV commercials. Commercials full of images of starving African babies with flies in their faces and these swollen stomachs. And I have to admit, when they came on TV, I would change the channel. They made me feel horrible. And I thought, what difference could I possibly make? Although I was aware of these inequalities, I didn't feel like I had the power to change things. In high school, I was a dedicated student and athlete. I got along with my teachers, and I had a wide circle of friends. In case you're curious, I'm the good-looking one in this photograph standing next to the coach, the one with that beautiful head of hair. Yeah, a lot has changed since high school. At this point in my life, I believed that I was destined to earn a degree from a top university, start a career, and get married, and buy a home in a good neighborhood. And then eventually, after a long career, kick back and retire, preferably somewhere with a beach where I could just relax and enjoy life. But it was during my time in university that I began to have this uneasy feeling. And I began to question this picture of a perfect life. A life that is largely about going out and getting things for yourself. A life about status and recognition. A life about accumulating and consuming. I realized that we don't just see the world, we interpret it through very specific ideas that we inherit through our education and our culture, and largely through marketing and media. It is easy to see why people begin to think that life is all about them, when our lives have become polluted with a constant stream of messages telling us that we are not skinny enough, that our clothes are no longer cool, or urging us to splurge on ourselves. As these questions and feelings began to surface with increasing frequency and intensity, I went out and I bought a map of the world and I hung it above my desk at university. And I would often stare at that map, daydreaming about visiting other countries and exploring other cultures. Somehow I was convinced that there must be more to it. And then 1 week after graduating from university, I went out and I bought a large purple backpack. And I know what you're thinking, but purple was very cool at the time. And I left. I left everything and everyone I have ever known in search of a more meaningful understanding of our world. And over the last 15 years, I have been on an incredible journey through almost 60 countries, from Paris to Peru, from the streets of New York, from the Taj Mahal to the Great Wall of China. And although these places have been interesting, it is the people that I have met along the way that have had the most profound impact on me. And nothing has affected me more completely or wounded me more deeply than witnessing the needless suffering caused by absolute poverty. My first intimate encounter with poverty came in June 2006, when I decided to volunteer in India for the summer. And it was there that I met Sierra. And although I worked with dozens of street children during my time there, who survived on picking through mounds of garbage to get food, Sierra stood out amongst the rest. She was funny and intelligent and had a tremendous desire to learn. And most days I would sit down and I would help Sierra with her homework. And on one occasion she invited me to visit her family in the slums. A little bit surprised by the invitation, I immediately said no. Deep down I was afraid I was afraid that I couldn't handle seeing where she lived. I cared about her too much, and I was worried that those images would haunt me forever. But she was persistent, and she kept on asking. And so eventually, I swallowed my fear and I went. And I was surprised at what I saw. This is a picture I took of Sierra and her family in front of their home. She's the one wearing the hat. And as you can see, despite her living conditions, she is full of life and laughter and hope. So leaving India, I was determined to find a way to ensure that Sierra had the resources she needed to complete her schooling. So when I returned to my community, I shared her story. And with the help of a number of teachers and students, we raised enough money to send not only Sierra to school, but 50 other children as well. My first experience with poverty taught me two things. Although you can close your eyes to the things you do not want to see in our world, you can change the channel, you can close your computer. You can't close your heart to the things that you do not want to feel. And perhaps more important, I learned that our small actions can literally change the course of people's lives. We are all capable of doing beautiful things in this world. So, if so little is needed to help 50 children living in India, why are there still millions of children living in poverty around the world? This question really began to bother me. And so I went out and I bought all the books I could find about poverty. In a desperate attempt to find solutions, I began traveling through South America and Asia and Africa, building homes for the homeless, volunteering in drop-in centers, visiting AIDS clinics and leper hospitals and refugee camps. And it was through all of these experiences that I began to learn that a large part of the solution came back to Sierra. I learned that the most powerful agent of change on our planet can be an educated child, especially an educated girl. 5 years ago, sitting in a coffee shop. Sure, you can clap, you can clap. 5 years ago, sitting in a coffee shop, I began writing all of this in an email. I wrote about how education is the great equalizer, how it is foundational to human development and one of the most basic of human rights. I wrote about my experiences, what I had seen, and how they affected me. And I shared my dream to live in a world in which every child can go to school, regardless of where they are born. I poured my heart into a long email, and I clicked send. And I waited, and I worried, and doubt began to seep in. Have you ever had a dream or a belief that you held deep within you, but you were too afraid to share? You were afraid of what people may think. I was worried that people would think I was crazy. This idea of building schools around the world seemed impossible. But then an amazing thing happened. I got my first response. I rushed to open the email and it read, "Dear Jeffrey, I believe in your dream. You can do it. Love, Mom." She's the only one that calls me Jeffrey. But thankfully, it wasn't long before we got our second response and our third and our fourth. We built a website, and we decided our first school was going to be in Kenya. And then a second amazing thing happened. Within the course of just a few months, we raised enough money to build our first school in Amori Joy, Kenya. And a couple of years ago, thank you. Thank you. And a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to visit that school. And when I arrived, all of the teachers lined up to shake my hand. I met some adorable students and a very proud principal named Philip of 450 children, in which half were girls. I also met an entire school with the same haircut as I have. Right? Yeah, crazy. Since then, we have been busy at building walls of wisdom, building schools in Kenya, in Ecuador, in Sri Lanka, in Ghana, and Nicaragua. And today, 700 students are learning in classrooms that we built. And in 10 years, over 7,000 students will have received an education in one of our classrooms. But even more exciting, I think, is we are part of a larger global trend that is winning the war against poverty. Since the year 2000, the course of your lifetime, the amount of people on our planet living in poverty has been cut in half. An astonishing 4.2 billion people have gained access to clean drinking water, and 45 million children have received access to an education. It is amazing to think that your generation may witness a world in which all humanity has the basic living standards that we take for granted every day. But for me, the best part, I mean the really good stuff, are still the individual stories. A few years ago in Yapala, out of a community of 700 people, only 16 could read. 6 women and 10 men. And today, and this is where students sporadically attended school. And today, Yapala has a new school for 150 children. Thank you. Sitting in the front of one of those classrooms is Sakina Fusini. She is 9 years old. She lives with her parents who are farmers and her 4 brothers. She loves to read, and she's one of Yapala's best students. She dreams of being a nurse one day, a life that was unimaginable just a few years ago, a life in which she can choose when to get married, how many children to have, a life in which she can get her family the food and medical treatment they need, a life in which her daughter can go to school. I know I don't need to stand here this afternoon and convince you to care. I know you do. But we need to stop being afraid to try. It is not a lack of compassion that keeps 58 million children out of school and living in poverty. It is a lack of action. I have shared my story with you in a hope that you begin to understand that actions you take today and throughout the course of your life is going to affect human civilization for generations. The time has always been and always will be right now. We are all capable of doing beautiful things in this world. I will end with the words of an individual who grew up in rural Africa. And he didn't attend a huge, beautiful school like this. He went to class every day in this tiny one-room schoolhouse, and armed only with his education and his dreams. He went on to change his community, change his country, and change the world as we know it. You may be familiar with his story. His name is Nelson Mandela, and his views on poverty are clear. He once said that overcoming poverty is not a task for charity. It is an act of justice. Poverty is not natural. It is man-made. And it can be overcome and eradicated through the actions of human beings. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. I believe that you can be that generation our world so desperately needs. A generation of global citizens that is willing to open up their eyes, but probably more importantly, their hearts to all humanity, and to begin to create a world that you want to live in. A world that you are proud to live in. Thank you.
And so this is the second year we've been fortunate enough to have Geoff with us and be able to speak to the 8th grade class. And throughout the last 4 or 5 years, we've been building the program, and we've been building through Home Base the opportunity for grade 8s to have a chance and have some time and have a teacher alongside them to guide them through a service learning project. And as Geoff mentioned, he didn't have this opportunity in grade 8. It didn't happen until much, much later for Geoff and for myself as well. You have a great opportunity to learn things and learn really important things about our world and about other people from different places. And what we're hoping in the last 30 minutes of today in your home bases, you can go through and have a look at the skills and talents that you all have, match those up with some interests and some themes in ways that we can help people, not just in Cambodia, not just in Africa, but here in Singapore as well. And we hope that 3 or 4 ideas might be generated, and over the course of this year, you follow one of those. So I'd like to thank Geoff again. And I'd like to thank each of you for being a fantastic audience as well today. We'll dismiss the middle section first. Please go to your home base and you can begin your planning for service learning.